This is the Vikstrand. So when it comes to the movies of Sergio Leone, this is probably his least famous and, in my opinion, his least good. It's not a movie without its merits, and parts of it is really, really good. One of the problems is, however, what's the actual title for this movie? Because it has been released, with multiple titles in multiple different regions. It was called, I think, Once Upon a Time Revolution, and it has also been called Duck You Sucker for some bizarre reason. But I'm going to go with the title that I'm mostly familiar with, and that is, of course, Fistfull of Dynamite. Now, why is this the weakest in Sergio Leone's fantastic filmography? That's what we're going to find out today. This is my review of A Fistful of Dynamite. It's Mexico, 1913, and the revolution is in full swing. But this doesn't concern the outlaw one played by Rod Steiger. He and his big family is robbing stagecoaches and performs the weirdest rape scene I think I've ever seen, which is both icky and weird. And if I could have cut anything from this movie, I would have cut that, because it serves no purpose whatsoever, except for maybe making us dislike one a bit more than we would have had otherwise. Anyway, he comes across a dynamite expert, John, played by James Coburn, and very, very reluctantly he agrees to help Juan with his lifelong dream of robbing the bank in Mesa Verde. That is gonna be his big score that he's going to do, and then he's probably going to stop being an outlaw maybe, or something like that. But the Mexican Revolution sort of kind of comes in between, because Coburn sees this as an opportunity to use this outlaw to help combat the evil and tyrannical forces and the evil colonel that is creeping around here. So that is essentially what this is. The problem is that it takes so long for us to actually find a purpose for this movie, and this movie takes so long to actually get going, because there is a lot of bickering, and there is so much stalling until Steiger and Coburn actually starts working together. There's also this problem with that they cannot quite figure out what type of movie this is. Sometimes it feels like a war movie, sometimes it feels like a traditional spaghetti western, sometimes it feels like a big David Lean thing with this sweeping shot that is absolutely amazing, where you see, at the train station we see these massive amounts of extras, and they're doing stuff, and they're assassinating people over here, and they're shoving people into carriages over there, and they're doing these enormous amounts of things in the same shot. It's so impressive. It's not a secret that David Lean was the big idol for Sergio Leone, and he wanted to be like him, and those sequences are fantastic. But we also have sequences that feel kind of out of place in this movie, and we have a lot of sequences that virtually nothing is happening. But then we have these very dramatic and horrible sequences when peasants are getting massacred and stuff like that. But then we have wacky sequences when they're throwing dynamite willy-nilly and yells, "Duck you sucker," and stuff like that. So the movie is all over the place, ping-ponging in between, different things. It would have been better probably to have this movie centered around John rather than Juan, because John, is a man who is not interested in money, and he's not interested really in, fixing this revolution thing, because he's, tired of violence because of what happens in Ireland. The Irish sequences, by the way, is so gorgeous, and it's such a fantastic juxtaposition to the brown and the dry Mexican settings with lush and green Irish settings. It could have been great to having those ping pong between each other, and his story would have been so much more interesting and better than Juan's slow descent into tragedy. We also have a huge gallery of characters that we introduce far too late. So we cannot really, make these characters simmers, because there's a lot of things happening with these characters, betrays and different things that's happening within the ranks of the revolution, between what I guess is Emilio Zapata's troops and stuff like that. Those things could have been great if they could have been introduced in an earlier stage, or if the movie could have been longer. But this movie is simultaneously too long and too short. I didn't know they could do that, but they somehow found a way to do it. Steiger is good, Coburn is good. There are sequences in this movie is absolutely fantastic, epic, and awe-inspiring. But there is also lots of sequences that just drags on and has no good payoff whatsoever. This is not a movie I will, rewatch anytime soon, because I can just as well watch the Dollar Trilogy, or Once Upon a Time in America, or Once Upon a Time in the West. All of them are better than this one. But it is probably the only Western movie in history that begins with a quote from Mao, I think. So it has always that to go with. So should you see this movie or not? If you have seen all the movies in the Dollar Trilogy and all the other stuff that Leone has done, but you haven't seen this, it is an interesting movie to watch, because in this movie violence has consequences. It is not just let's kill some folks and be done with it and then play some cool music. It is, stuff that happens in this movie has consequences. And this is a movie which shows how Sergio Leone's style is changing. Do I think this movie would have been better if they would have had an Eli Wallach or a Clint Eastwood, or maybe a Lee Van Cleef in this movie? I think so, but they're doing the best they can, and I think that they have interesting characters, and it is a movie that will engage you, but it's nowhere near as good as Sergio Leone's other movies. So this is a movie that is all over the place. The action sequences and the more traditional spaghetti western sequences and the sweeping David Lean-esque shots, they are great. They are absolutely amazing. But we also have lots of fillers, and we have lots of things that ultimately hurt the storytelling. And if they could have focused a little bit more, I think this movie could have been even better. 69 points, however, is nothing to sneeze at. This is a good movie. This is a really good movie. In counterpart to how good this movie actually was, there is a bit of a disconnect here. I really like this movie, actually, Once Upon a Time, but the more I've seen about it, the less good I think it is. So I probably should stop right now, but I think 69 is a rating that is fair. So this is the weakest in the Sergio Leone catalog, you think? Or do you think that you have someone that is worse than this one? Comment below, and I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.